Hey everybody, my name is Edward, and I am going to be doing a small breakdown in like deck tech on my newest deck, based on my two favorite commanders. This is a Landfall deck, which we will get more into. As you can see, I've kind of got everything laid out in terms of type, and they are even alphabetical and in mana value ways, which I used Moxfield to do. I'm not actually all that smart. We can start here with the commanders. These are signed by some of my best friends and some people that I play with pretty consistently at my LGS, and I do that just because I think it's fun. So this is a partner deck using Thrasios Triton Hero and Vial Smasher the Fierce. So that means this is a 4-color deck. It is green, blue, black, and red. These are both the coolest arts I could find of these for now, barring the Final Fantasy, which I wasn't super hot on the Final Fantasy Thrasios. So Thrasios says here, you can pay 4, scry 1, then reveal the top card of your library. If it's a land, put that card right onto the battlefield tapped, otherwise draw a card. This is the kingpin of the entire deck, as he is going to be the source of most of your explosive, heavy draw turns, which we will kind of go over the ways in which that happens. Notoriously one of the strongest commanders in the entire game. And yeah, he's really good. Obviously, being in Simic means finding land, ramping, and drawing cards are not really an issue, specifically when you've got a text box like that. So, great card there. Vial Smasher is more of a fun include for me. Vial Smasher is a 2/3 for 3 mana legendary Berserker Goblin, and she says whenever you cast your first spell, Vial Smasher, whenever you cast your first spell each turn, choose an opponent at random. Typically, we will roll a dice, and then the person who rolls the lowest number will take the effect. It says Vial Smasher, the Fierce deals damage equal to that spell's mana value to that player or planeswalker that player controls. So it is ramp and card draw, burn, and subsequently can just be planeswalker removal. That doesn't come up too often. Typically, I'm beaming the player for whatever I cast. So these are going to be the commanders for the deck. Really, really good comboing here, because what a nice little pair. So let's move on from this. Don't mind the mess in the background. I've got a couple other decks going, including my wife's Edgar Markov deck. So let's put these guys up here. We do play 2 Planeswalkers in this deck, with my favorite being Tyvar, Jubilant Brawler, mostly because 1, cheap, efficient. He is 1 in a Golgari for a Planeswalker with 3 loyalty. Comes in and says, you may activate abilities of creatures you control as if those creatures had haste, meaning anything with a tap activated ability, which there's a couple good synergies like that in this deck. Primarily Mana Dorks. If this guy hits and then some Mana Dorks come out, boy oh boy, you will be off to the races. Especially since the +1 ability on this card is to untap up to 1 target creature. That is insane when you can tap a Delighted Halfling for a blue, and then +1 to untap it, tap it for a green, and cast Thrasios with a single mana dork. Very strong there. And then the -2 is less used. It says mill 3 cards. You may return a creature card with mana value 2 or less from your graveyard to the battlefield. Comes up in some instances, which I will point out when they come up in the creature section, but just an overall workhorse in the deck. Getting to double tap mana dorks is, well, surprise, surprise, it's pretty broken. So, good card there. Minsc and Boo, more of a fun ad, as you can see. Also, I don't have the foil version, darn it. But Minsc and Boo is 2, a red and a green for a 3 loyalty planeswalker as well. It says, when it enters and during your upkeep, make a 1/1 hamster token named Boo. It's got trample and haste, the token does. +1 says you can put 3 counters on up to 1 target creature with trample or haste. It's very important to remember, it has to be +1/+1 counters on a creature that has trample or has haste. You cannot just put the counters on any creature you want. The -2 is when stuff starts to get really good. It says -2, sacrifice a creature. When you do, Minsc and Boo, Timeless Hero, deals X damage to any target, where X is the sacrificed creature's power. And if the sacrificed creature was a hamster, you draw that many cards. So the theory with this is that you're going to get Boo into play, and you're going to immediately +1 to put 3 counters on Boo. He's now a 4/4 with trample and haste. Swing in, or don't swing in, keep back a 4/4 blocker. The next turn, you're going to put 3 more counters on him. He is going to be a 7/7 at that point. You may then swing your 7/7, probably connect, and then the following turn, you can -2 and flick a 7/7 at somebody after you've attacked with him. Very fun. And then, of course, you draw an absurd amount of cards with this guy. Really, really, really good Planeswalker here. So that will close out the Planeswalker section. And as we go, I'll kind of put these back in the order they go, like so. My instants are going to flip over. Okay, so with the very large creature section, these are all creatures in this deck. The very large creature section, you are going to see a lot of redundancy. Starting with, we'll just split this in half and we'll kind of go piece by piece here. So, Birds of Paradise, not a secret, best mana dork. One of the best mana dorks, I should say, in the entire game. Delighted Halfling is really, really good in this deck. I do play a lot of Legends, so if you can pay 1, or tap it, pardon me, and add a colorless mana, which is just fine. But you can tap, add 1 mana of any color, spend this mana only to cast a legendary spell, and that spell can't be countered. Uncounterable Legends is really good in this deck. I'm playing things like Yarok Tadiova, which we'll get to later, Ashai, just obscene to not be able to counter those spells. For those blue players, this is their worst nightmare on a turn 1 play. Elvish Mystic needs no introduction, just a really good ramp source, mana dork, 1 mana, efficient, it's great. Essence Warden, on the other hand, does some absolute work in this deck. Whenever another creature enters the battlefield, you gain 1 life. The really sick caveat that a lot of people forget with this card is it doesn't say a creature you control. This is just whenever a creature enters the battlefield. If you're playing against tokens, if you're playing against somebody that wants to play creatures pretty consistently, as well as your own creatures, this thing is going to put in work. You're going to gain what seems to be a small amount of life initially, but ultimately it turns into what can oftentimes be an absolute game-changing amount of life, and it pairs really well with another creature in the deck, which we will get to. We'll start hitting a couple of our landfall cards here. So Hedron Crab, whenever a land enters the battlefield, a target player will just mill 3 cards. It's 1 mana, it's an 0/2, so it's okay at blocking in the early game. Milling 3 cards every time a land enters happens an obscene amount in this deck. So this card will just start getting rid of threats from the library, get rid of threats that you just don't want to have to deal with later. It's very, very strong. Ignoble Hierarch, actually better than Elvish Mystic in this deck, seeing how it taps for 3 of our colors, and it has an Exalted, which means whenever a creature attacks alone, they actually get an extra +1/+1 counter for until end of turn. This is the easiest way to get Vial Smasher into play very, very quickly in the early game, because it taps for 2 of the 3 colors required to do so. It can also just cast a Thrasios on turn 2 if that's what I want to do. So, another great card. I should also mention it casts other mana dorks, being that it taps for green. Just a Jund mana dork is awesome. Iridescent Vine Lasher. You can see the mana value early on is pretty low. So Iridescent Vine Lasher is a 1/2 Lizard Assassin with Landfall. We'll hit the Offspring thing in a second, but Landfall says whenever a land you control enters, this creature does 1 damage to a target opponent. Now, it is Offspring, so if you pay 2 additional, so 3 mana as you cast this spell, 1 for the black, 2 additional, you get an extra copy of this as a 1/1, meaning every time a land enters, you can either ping somebody for 2 or 2 opponents for 1. Very, very efficient pinging damage. Ruin Crab is Hedron Crab, but just better, honestly. It's got 1 more toughness. It costs the same amount of mana, and instead of targeting an opponent to mill 3, well, fuck it. Why don't all of you guys do it? Seems really, really good to me. Yeah, it's literally just better Hedron Crab, and it's got Landfall, so it's in the deck. New one from the Final Fantasy set. This is, I don't actually know how to say that, so we're just going to say teeny tiny Chocobo guy in hand. Landfall, whenever a land you control enters, put a +1/+1 counter on this creature. boy, oh boy, this thing will get chunky really quick. A couple landfall triggers, or if you start playing multiple lands per turn, which we'll get to, man, this thing can get some power behind it very quickly. Another good thing to note is it is permanent counters. They are not till end of turn. This thing will get big, stay big, and eat healthy for the majority of the time you play. Very strong. Next one in play. So this one is a combo piece as well as just a good value engine in this deck. Sky Shroud Ranger. So you can pay 1 green for a 1/1, tap it, choose a land card in your hand, and put it into play. Basically, tap, landfall, right away, immediately. This has a couple of combos that go with it. And okay, sorry about that. We are, I had to close my door here. My daughter's playing Minecraft. So, again, you tap it, you put a land from your hand right into play, and yeah, you start just racking up landfall triggers. There's one major way to untap this, and it combos with one land, well, a couple similar lands that I have in the deck, and an enchantment, which we will get to a little bit later. Great card. Bloodghast, I've thought about cutting this guy, honestly. There was initially a combo with this card in the deck, but in the sake of maybe trying to just cut a couple of the high power combos, which there are still plenty of in this deck, I just didn't feel as it was efficient or necessary enough to play the other combo as well. So I actually cut a Zamonandina, which goes infinite with this deck, and ironically the same enchantment that the Sky Shroud Ranger goes infinite with. So, Bloodghast is okay. It says this creature has haste as long as an opponent has 10 or less life. Really hard to do in a format where everybody starts with 40. Also, landfall. Whenever a land you control enters, you may return this card from your graveyard directly to the battlefield. In theory, you would play the specific enchantment, which we'll get to. Tap Zamonandina, sack the Bloodghast, put a land from your hand into play, and then immediately return the Bloodghast, and the enchantment was capable of untapping Zamonandina, allowing you to repeat the loop ad nauseum. So, for essentially just infinite landfall triggers, and you could draw your deck and ping everybody to death with Zamonandina. I just think it was inefficient enough that I didn't feel like going through with it. So this card's actually on the ability to be cut. If anybody's got a suggestion for a decent little 2-drop, preferably a black creature. I'm trying to branch out. You'll notice eventually this deck is majority green. I think Moxfield says like 48% of the deck is green. Bloom Tender. Holy cow, this mana dork is so excessively efficient. Tap for each color among permanents you control, add 1 mana of that color. I would like to circle back to the fact that we are in a 4-color deck, meaning if you have both of your commanders in play, you will make, by tapping this one dork, a blue, a green, a red, and a black. And holy cow, when you start activating this thing, think about this. With both your commanders out, Bloom Tender taps for an activation of Thrasios on her own. That's absurd. That's like highway robbery levels of value from a single mana dork that costs 2 mana. Now, it is a 1/1, and it is fragile, but if it sits around for even a single turn, it's going to do some work. So, yeah, doesn't need a whole bunch of extra explanation. That card's insane. Going on more with some insane cards, we've got Bristly Bill. Landfall, whenever a land enters the battlefield under your control, put a +1/+1 counter on target, any creature you control. And then for 5 mana, you can just straight up double the number of counters on each creature you control. Really, really absurd. You start putting counters on your commander. You start putting counters on, maybe a Bloom Tender, so you can make it a little more stocky. Don't want it to die to something right away. What an efficient card this turns out to be. And then this deck has no problem paying 5 mana, as you'll find out when we get to the land section and whatnot. Man, oh man, you can activate 5 mana probably 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 times a turn in the late game with this thing, and it becomes absurd. Very, very, very strong Magic card. There's a reason this guy's $60. It's not a secret. Easier one to explain. Lotus Cobra. Landfall, make an extra mana. So land, Landfall trigger makes a mana. You suddenly have 2 mana, and it's not a tap ability. This can trigger as many times as you can play lands per turn. When the Sky Shroud Ranger bit starts to go off, this essentially makes what is near infinite amount of mana, which with a commander that lets you pay 4 mana, you can dump all of it into him and just spin the wheels, you know what I mean? You've got 4 mana, you activate Thrasios once, you hit another land, it replaces one of the mana, now you activated Thrasios for 3. It starts to chain absurdly. So Lotus Cobra is really good. There's another similar card in the deck with it, which we'll get to. Sabo Tender, another new one out of Final Fantasy. It's a reaching 2/1, which literally doesn't matter. But landfall, whenever a land you control enters, it deals 1 damage to each opponent. It is not strictly better, but it's another very similar effect to the Vinewood Lasher that we've already spoken about. Play a land, ping ya. Really super strong. You know what I mean? Springheart Nantuko. Holy cow. This is a card. Okay. Modern Horizons 3 was notoriously a very, very strong set. I don't think that's like a secret to many of us, just how I'm sitting here. It's not a secret that Modern Horizons 3 was busted. But to give us essentially, and I'm going to say essentially because it's not nearly as good, but it's really, really close. It's very much so in the same vein. Springheart Nantuko for 2 mana, whether it's the bestow cost or the actual mana value cost, gives a creature +1/+1 right off the rip. But also, it's got landfall. Whenever a land enters the battlefield under your control, you may pay a colorless and a green. If it's attached to a creature, you're going to make a copy of that creature, which is busted. If you put this on, well, let's just make these. Let's make Sabo Tenders, and then every time a land enters, I'm going to pay 2 and make another one. Now all of a sudden everybody's getting pinged for 2, 3, 4, 5 on one land. That's it, exponential. Lotus Cobra, let's just make 6 mana because I played a land. And then you're going to pay 2 with the 6 mana that you just made off the original. Oh, it's absurd. This thing starts to chain out of control, and at the very worst, if you don't make a copy of that creature, you're just going to make a bug, which feeds one of my best lands and just gives you fodder, which is another just insane. This card's busted. There's a reason that when Nadu was in CEDH, and I think even Modern, it played this because, yeah, I will gladly sit and make a trillion bugs. Busted Magic card. On the vein of busted Magic cards, we've got Tifa Lockhart. She's a 1/2 for 2 with Trample. It says whenever a land you control enters, double her power until end of turn. Now, this card is, at its very surface, it seems like, okay, so it is just going to be a 2/2 most of the time, right? No, because we play abilities to play multiple lands per turn. If we are activating Thrasios pre-combat, we could very likely make 10 mana, activate, or let's say 12 mana. We can activate Thrasios 4, 8, 12. That's 3 times. Let's say we get absurdly lucky. That's 3 lands. Well, she's a 2/2. Then she's a 4/4. Then she's an 8/8, or pardon me, an 8/2. Yeah, I'll move to combat and swing an 8/2 at you. That seems just fine for me. This card gets exponentially sillier the more lands you can figure out how to kind of flicker and bounce into play and that and the other. Yeah, 2 mana, trample, 1/2. Doesn't look great on the surface, but boy, oh boy, that thing smacks. Landfall staple, Azusa, Lost But Seeking. Remember, we want to be able to play multiple lands per turn so that we can trigger all of these landfall effects really well. How do we do that? Well, you can just play 2 additional lands on each of your turn. God forbid you play bounce lands and figure out how to return some of your better lands right to your hand and then play them again, and then maybe it's a bounce land. So I'll bounce a land, put this in my hand. That's 1 land. Do that a couple times. You've got 3 landfall triggers. Things are huge. You're making 1,300 bugs. You're pinging everybody. This card is an engine. Some people think it's more of a ritual. If it's in your opener and you can go land, ramp spell, land, play Azusa, and then on your next turn go land, land. Like, that's obviously already good. Start adding the fact that now we're getting extra effects for playing those lands, and Azusa becomes like almost a kill on sight type creature, which is just unfortunate because you're really going to be wanting to kill the other crap that I've got in play. So she goes under the radar a lot and just allows you to ramp to an obscene level. Great card. Courser of Crewfix is the next one. This is an oldie but goodie. It's been reprinted a couple times, and you know what? It's just a good card. You can play with the top card of your library revealed. Sometimes it sucks. You don't really want to know. You don't really want people to know what you're drawing. But at the same time, it's like, who really cares, right? You can play in the top card of your land, top card of your library, if it's a land, still applies the one only rule, and then you just gain life when lands enter. Why not, right? Pretty self-explanatory. Gain life, play more lands. Chromatic Lantern is a divisive magic card. However, Dryad of the Elysian Grove is strictly better. 2 and a green. You may play an additional land on each of your turns. More of that Lady Azusa effect for playing a bunch of lands. And the lands you control are every basic land type in addition to their other types. Why not just make all of your lands command towers? Right? Busted. More lands. Busted. Great card. Tireless Provisioner, another weaker one, but it's still great. Whenever a land enters the battlefield under your control, you can make a food or a treasure. You're probably always going to pick treasure in this deck because it's very, very mana hungry, but sometimes I'm sure there's going to be a niche case where you're like, boy, oh boy, if I only had 3 more life, I'd have won the game. Great, make a treasure or a food. It doesn't matter. Another good one, Loot. Which is 2 and a green. You may play an additional land on each of your turns. I feel like you're starting to probably catch the theme here. It also has an ability to pay 6. Look at the top 6 cards of your library, and then you may reveal a creature card with mana value less than or equal to the number of lands you control, and then put that thing right onto the battlefield. Put the rest on the bottom. You're going to have enough lands to essentially put anything you want from, unless you're doing this wicked early, which you shouldn't be if it's 6 mana. It's not your best effect. You should be doing something else. It's mostly in here for that first line of text, but man, you start popping that 6, do it, figure out a way to untap him, do it again. Boy, you're going to be off to the races with this little guy. I do need a mana foil of that card. I really want one bad. Perfect segue into Mossborn Hydra, which I also would like a mana foil of. This card's stupid. This card's stupid and busted. 2 and a green. Trample. It's a 1/1. This creature enters with a +1/+1 counter. That's what makes it a 1/1. Landfall. Whenever a land you control enters, double the number of +1/+1 counters on this creature. Very similar to Tifa. However, you keep those. Ooh, and it's +1/+1 counters, so its toughness also starts to see the rise exponentially. Wowzers, this thing can get really big really quick. I mean, think about this. It's a 2/2. And when you play another land, it's a 4/4. Now it's an 8/8, 16/16, 32/32. What the hell? I mean, 4 or 5 lands in, and this thing is presenting lethal to just about anybody who's not playing a life gain deck in like a single combat. God forbid you Minsk and Boo and flick it at somebody and just go, great, I'll swing and kill one person, Minsk and Boo all -2 and flick it at the other person. Now it's a 1-on-1 and I have a 64/64. Well, I did, but I probably have all this other crap into play. So you know what I mean? Like, this card flies under the radar a little bit, and it's never removed until it's too big, and boy, oh boy, I love when people swords this thing. So, another great card. That's going to be our first half of creatures. Put those over there. Got a bunch more to go through. A lot of these are relatively easy to go through, so we'll fly through them. Nissa is also absurd. She has the same Lotus Cobra effect, meaning play a land, you get an extra mana when you play a land. However, if it's the second time that abilities happen this turn, which as we've shown, they have plenty of ways to filter more lands in than we're supposed to, you actually start revealing cards from the top of your deck until you hit an elf or an elemental, meaning you're probably going to hit that Hydra, Avenger of Zendikar, or any of the 300 mana dorks that we play in this deck. You put it into your hand, but it doesn't matter because she gives you the extra mana. If it's a mana dork, you're playing it right now. This card's awesome. There's a reason she's $40 as well. Really good. Ramming up, we play fetches in this deck. That's all I should really have to say. You may play land cards from your graveyard. If this is out and I have even one fetch, I will never miss a land drop for the rest of the game. Okay. All done. Great. Just kidding. But seriously, holy cow. Skewed Swarm. Skewed Swarm is like an all-star in this deck specifically, typically because of one of the lands that I will vehemently fight and claw to try and get into play as quickly as possible. Yeah, Skewed Swarm doubles itself when you have 6 lands, or it just makes bugs. Typically, you're going to make 2 or 3 bugs, and then by the time you've hit this again, you're going to make a Skewed Swarm. And then you're going to play another land, you're going to have 4 Skewed Swarms. And then you're going to play another land, and you have 8. And then I don't really know how much more than that you need to keep going. You can legitimately make thousands of these little bastards. It's so crazy. Also, special shout out, what an awesome flavor text. My mom and I both play this card, and we love the flavor text. So, yeah, we don't need to go over how broken Skewed Swarm is. Final Fantasy was good for landfall, guys. 2 and a green. You may look at the top card of your library at any time. I like knowledge. You may play lands and cast bird spells from the top of your library. Okay, so better Courser of Crufix. If a land or a bird you control entering the battlefield causes a triggered ability of a permanent you control to trigger, word soup, it triggers an additional time. Long and short of this, Yarok. This is just another copy of Yarok the Desecrated, however, much easier to cast, much cheaper, and you can play the lands from the top of the deck, which just, what? Yeah, what a good card. Honest to goodness, what a great Magic card. Obviously, everybody's chasing the golden ones and the black ones, like the very fancy, the serialized ones. Just pick up a normal copy, guys. It's great. Good card. Wayward Swordtooth. It's got Ascend. Literally doesn't matter. You may play an additional land on each of your turns. We're back. It can't attack or block unless you have the City's Blessing, which I think is like 10 permanents, it says up there, but you don't care. You're playing this so you can play more lands. Wood Elves. But should elves. Jared. When Wood Elves comes into play, search your library for a forest card, put it into play, shuffle your library afterwards. Yeah, we're playing duels and shocks in this deck. You're not just going to grab a forest, you're going to grab something that taps for whatever perfect amount of colors you need right now. And then it adds to a cradle count, which is absurd. Elephant in the room here. We're just going to expose, obviously. It's not a secret, really, if you've played against this deck or if you know me as a player at all. I really like Gaea's Cradle. And so for 4 mana, I will gladly just cast this spell, go find Gaea's Cradle, put it into the battlefield, not tapped, by the way, and then shuffle. I'm almost never going to kick it. I'm not a big fan of blowing out other people's lands, especially when I'm trying to do something as absurd as this. You're going to need mana to fight back, so have it. Unless you have a Cradle, and then yours is gone. Yeah, I'm going to go put Cradle into play for 4 mana. Pretty good. Wowza. I slept on this card for excessively too long. Ashaya warps the game in such an unbelievable sense in this deck that it's egregious. She says her power and toughness are equal to the number of lands you control, and non-token creatures you control are forest lands in addition to their other types. You want to play a forest that goes and finds a Gaea's Cradle? You want to play Wood Elves, which is going to go find a forest, which is going to be a forest. They're both going to trigger landfall effects, because here's the deal. If your creatures are forest lands, as they enter, they trigger landfall abilities. So playing a Mana Dork is officially as good as playing a land and getting all of those sick, beautiful abilities. Ashaya is hands down one of the best creatures in this deck. I'm in black and I'm playing Landfall. It's kind of why Obnixilis is in here. He kind of bolts people. He becomes a really big blocker. When land enters, you essentially lightning bolt somebody. They lose 3 life, and then you put 3 counters on this guy. You start doubling the triggers. He becomes really egregious very quickly, but otherwise, he's just good. He's okay. 5 mana, make a 6/6 is whatever. 5 mana, make a 6/6 lightning bolt somebody's pretty good. So he's in there. Yeah, it's a game changer for a reason, guys. Seedborn Muse and Thrasios are best buddies. They love each other. Isn't it really cool to pay for, put a land into play, or pay for and draw a card? Yeah, can I do it 13 fucking times and on everybody else's turn? Stupid. Seedborn's awesome. It's free. Pretty much free information. Tadiova, Benthic Druid, whenever a land enters, this is before they had Landfall, by the way, I believe is when this card was initially, like very, 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 very first printing of her was before Landfall was its own keyword. So it says whenever a land enters the battlefield under your control, you gain a life and draw a card. I could also just be straight up wrong about that first fact. Maybe they just didn't want to put Landfall on the card. Basically, Landfall, gain one, draw a card. Card draw engine good. You know, card in hand, make good. Yarok, we talked about him a little bit earlier. Death Touch, Lifelink, 5 mana, 3/5. Used to be the commander of the deck, and then I switched over to Vial and Thras. If a permanent entering the battlefield causes a triggered ability of a permanent you control to trigger, it does it twice. This is great because it's not just the landfall triggers. Our little boy down there, Wood Elves, loves this guy. How about landfall trigger twice when Wood Elves enters? Silly. Yeah, so ironically, you're going to get 2 Wood Elf triggers to go find 2 forests, and then each of those 2 forests is going to double trigger landfall triggers for everything. So you're getting 2 lands and 4 landfall triggers on everything you're playing. Okay, Yarok's awesome. He also is a part of yet another infinite in the deck. AC. You may play an additional land on each of your turns. We want as many of those effects as possible. We're going to draw a bunch of cards. We're going to play a bunch of lands. We're going to swarm the board very, very quickly. This deck doesn't go past turn 5 or 6 very often. It's very aggressive. Whenever a land enters the battlefield under your control, you may draw a card. It's just Tadiova with a bigger body and an extra land drop stapled to it. So really decent there. Deadeye Navigator, another card on the chopping block, honestly. I play this because, 1, I've got a pretty one, and 2, it's kind of funny to flicker Avenger of Zendikar. However, it's just going to be a combo piece in most cases, and again, I'm trying to cut as many of those as I can from the deck without neutering some of the best potential in the deck. Yeah, I mean, we all know Peregrine Drake and Palinchron go infinite with this guy. I don't play Peregrine Drake, I do play Palinchron in this deck. Essentially, if you've got a Palinchron, play it, you untap 7, use 2, or you soul bomb the 2 together, then you pay 2, flicker the Palinchron. In response to flickering it, you tap all your mana though, so you're going to go mana positive and generate infinite mana that way. Palinchron just does it with Yarok though as well, so don't really need 2 ways to do it in this deck, so I think Deadeye Navigator will eventually get axed. Niv Mizzet is the one card in this deck specifically suited towards Vial Smasher. Specifically. So, I'm going to reread Vial for this. Whenever you cast your first spell, each turn, choose an opponent at random, and Vial Smasher the Fierce deals damage equal to that spell's mana value to that player or a planeswalker he or she controls. Now, that is not combat damage. So, Niv says whenever a source you control deals non-combat damage to an opponent, draw that many cards. I would love to play a 6/6. Vial Smasher trigger, shoot somebody for 6. Niv Mizzet trigger, draw 6. What? This card in Vial love each other. They are bestest buddies. This is the one support piece I truthfully put in this deck for Vial, so I will probably never cut it. And I need a mana foil. Fuck. Avenger of Zendikar. Enters the battlefield. Create a 0/1 plant for each land you have. That's plenty. Landfall. Make your plants a little bit bigger each time. We can play 5, 6, 7 lands a turn. So, yeah, they're going to get huge very quickly. Avenger of Zendikar doesn't need a whole bunch of explaining either. It's a pretty casual, like a common staple. Palinchron, we've just explained Palinchron, so I'm not going to get into it. It untaps lands as it enters. You can pay 4 and bounce it, and then it goes mana positive with a ham sandwich worth of stuff. Also, I have a pretty one. I'll put that there. And then our guy, our good old guy, Timmy's loved this guy. Greater of Behemoth. When he enters, you make everything big enough to kill everybody, guaranteed almost every time you play it. So, yeah, we know how Crater Hoof works. Those are the creatures. It's not a secret. It's going to boil down to play more lands, and you get more landfall triggers. And then the landfall triggers that work. The ones that don't are, well, they all work. That's the whole point. Vandal Blast. I'm in red. I'm going to destroy artifacts. Artifacts absolutely hose me. If I see a Cursed Mirror, I'll cry. If I see things that like ping me when creatures enter, I'll cry. I struggle against Voltron decks as a player, not even as a deck, but just as a player. So I would like to blow up all of your pretties right now and maybe keep whatever of mine I have, which isn't many. So I love Vandal Blast. Finale of Devastation is a tutor. It is a tutor. It is a tutor. It is, and it can also just win the game. So Finale says, search your library for, or graveyard, which I guess I always forget, for a creature card with mana value X or less, put it on the battlefield. Right into play. You don't have to cast it. And then shuffle your library. If X was 10 or more, creatures you control also get plus X, and gain haste until end of turn. Haste Enabler probably finds Craterhoof Behemoth at the end game, or Seedborn Muse in the mid-game, and once I've got Seedborn Muse and Thrasios, you're losing. You're really losing quite bad. This card is basically the best creature tutor in the deck, barring maybe one that we'll get to in a second. Nature's Lore, search for a forest, put it into battlefield, not tap, then shuffle. Great card. 3 Visits is the exact same thing. They're literally the exact same card. 3 Visits, Nature Lore, perfect cards. Great ramp. Second best creature tutor in the deck. Vial Smasher loves turning into Seedborn Muses. Or, God forbid, I'm already winning and maybe I just want to say, hey, my 5-drop, or my, my 6-drop is now in Craterhoof Behemoth. This lets you sack a creature as you cast it for 1 a green. It's impossible to read, but I know what the card does. As an additional cost to play this, you sack a creature. Then you tutor your deck for a creature with 2 mana value or less, more than the creature you sacked. So if you sack a 3 mana creature, you can go find a 5 mana or less creature and put it right into play, which is typically Vial Smasher turning into Seedborn Muse. Yeah, that's all it really needs to do. Put a creature into play for 3 mana and the cost of a creature you don't need anymore. Yes, please. Oftentimes, Lady Azusa also likes turning into Seedborn Muse with this thing, because I'm going to eventually run out of the ability to play extra lands from my hand. I'd rather just be able to play them off my deck with Seedborn Muse now, so great. And then Skyscraper Claim. 4 mana, go find 2 forests, put them into the battlefield. Again, not tap, then shuffle. Best ramp in the... These are the best ramp sorceries, in my opinion. These 3 specifically. So, yeah, I play those. Okay, getting into the nitty-gritty stuff now. Every deck needs instants. It's not super fun to in response, but we're going to do some of that. Crop Rotation says, as an additional cost to spell, sacrifice a land, and then search your deck for Gaia's Cradle. Yep, that's what it do, Yugi. Noxious Revival says, oh no, they dealt with something. I'm going to put it back and then draw it with a Thrasios activation for literally 2 life or 1 green mana. I make 4 trillion green mana in this deck. It's never an issue. Also, I just had the pretty one, and it's my only good piece of recursion in the deck, so I'm going to play it. Psych Rift, big bad boogeyman board wipe of the format. I have a really pretty one, and I had it signed by the artist, so yeah, pay 7, bounce everything, watch everybody try to struggle and rebuild while you spin Thrasios with a Gaia's Cradle out seems absurd. Most of the time you actually never even need to use this in this deck. It's in here because, oops, just in case, or 2, I really want to close it out and make sure I win. Most of the time, if my board is in such a way that I'm already ahead and then I can't overload a Cyclonic Rift, most people will concede to that, and I can't blame them at all. That's totally understandable. So, Mana Drain. Mana-hungry deck like this card. I'm going to counter your 10-drop, and then I'm going to spin Thrasios with the mana on my first main phase. Okay. Really, really good card. Mana Drain's just a good, casual counterspell. I don't like it so much in CDH, but it's great here. Snap. Return target creature to its owner's hand. Untap 2 lands. I will bounce your most problematic thing and untap probably my Buckleberry Fairy and my Gaia's Cradle, and then I'll spin Thrasios some more. The deck is very Thrasios reliant. If you can kill him a couple times, I'll struggle a little bit more. Yeah, it's efficient removal that lets me essentially ramp. It's very good. We'll get into the 3 easy ones to explain. Deflecting Swat, Fierce Guardianship, Deadly Relic. If you control your commander, they're free. Change a spell with a different target. Counter a spell. Your shit's gone. Exile anything I want. Great. And Force of Will. I've got a pretty copy. It was signed by one of my friends at the shop here, and It's actually a really funny story. He really didn't want to sign it because he goes, dude, that's a $100 force of will. And I said, buddy, I pulled it in front of you and I love you to death, so please sign my card. And hi, Malachi. I only play 2 artifacts in this deck. Soul Ring and Arcane Signet. I've got pretty ones. I like these. I've actually got a prettier Soul Ring than this, but I like the retro border look to these. We all know what Soul Ring and Arcane Signet do, so don't really need to go over that a whole bunch. Almost there, guys. 4 enchantments to go through. My favorite one is Training Grounds. This card's silly. It makes it so that Thrasios activations only cost 2. It is the only reason the card is in the deck. And this turn 1, turn 2 Thrasios means turn 3 you're already in trouble. I'm ramping faster and drawing more cards than you way sooner than you thought. So this is just a great card with Thrasios. Power Balance is a fun include. Hi, Jared. Whenever an opponent casts a spell, we're going to make this easy because it's very wordy. If you cast a 4-mana spell, and I flip the top card of my library over and it costs 4 mana, I'm going to play it right now. It breaks timing restrictions and allows me to just play cards on other people's turns, which, fun fact, Vial Smasher triggers on everybody's turns, not just mine. So, yeah, I'll just play spells, shoot you with Vial, and get free stuff off of you, so thanks. Retreat to Coral Helm is in this deck as a combo piece. I don't need the Scry Wand ever. Thrasios does that at a much more effective rate. It says Landfall. Whenever a land enters the battlefield under your control, you may choose one. Scry 1, or you can untap a creature. Now, Sky Shroud Ranger can tap, put a land into play. It's going to be a bounce land, which we will get to. A land that says, as this enters play, bounce a land from your battlefield back to your hand. You're going to bounce the bounce land you just played. Landfall trigger to untap Sky Shroud Ranger. Tap Sky Shroud Ranger. Put a bounce land into play. Get your landfall triggers. You're going to get infinite landfall triggers with this, a Sky Shroud Ranger, and 1 bounce land. This thing is not a secret either. It goes infinite with also Zamon and Dina with the Bloodghast. This was the enchantment I mentioned earlier. So it's great enchantment. It untaps. It also just untaps Mana Dorks whenever you play lands, which is great. And do you pay the 1? Do you pay the 1? Great. Heuristic Study. Okay, onto the nitty-gritty. This stuff's all very easy to kind of skim through. I'm playing duels, shocks, and pathways for the most part. So we're going to split the lands in half. I'll stop at the important lands when I need to, but otherwise we play a Badlands, Tide Channel Pathway. It's a Simic land. Bayou, another pathway. All of my shocks in this deck are the Infinity foils. They're not the Galaxy foils because, oh my god, they're very expensive. Fetch lands are essentially 2 landfall triggers every time I get to play one, and they're really good with Ramunap Excavator. More shock lands. Buckleberry Fairy. This is one of the ones I really wanted to go over. Now, let's say, and it happens. It does happen. It's very rare, but it can happen. Let's say you're getting a little bit hosed and you cannot get to your lands. You can't draw any. And good lord, if I just had a couple landfall triggers for a Lotus Cobra or a Nissa, I could just play this spell. Well, tell you what. Can you play multiple lands per turn? Great. Play it. Landfall trigger. Tap it for a blue. Use the blue to the second ability here to return it to your hand. Play it again. You can do this as many times as you can play lands per turn, which we have just shown. It's a bunch. This is another good crop rot target. I don't want to sound like I only get Gaia's Cradle. Now, if I've already sowing Myco Spawned, I've grabbed Cradle, and then I draw into crop rot, this is the next land I'm grabbing because it's very, very good. It's so unbelievably good. Pathways. I have a signed command tower, which I think is awesome. Pathway. These are the bounce lands I'm talking about. They enter and they tap for 2 mana. So to make up for that, it enters tapped, and you have to bounce into the land you control to your hand. I play a lot of these for the simple fact I enjoy being able to play multiple lands per turn. Maybe I spin this off of Thrasios, put it into play. Sometimes I'll leave it in play, bounce a Gaia's Cradle, replay a Gaia's Cradle, and start activating Thrasios some more. Eventually, that just starts to cause people to go, yeah, you probably got this, man. Flooded Strand, Gaia's Cradle. I have a really pretty one, so I play Gaia's Cradle in this deck. I mean, Skewed Swarm, Bugs, Mana Dorks. This will make 14 trillion mana every single time it hits the board. It's not a secret. It's absurd. It's busted. It's a game changer for a reason. This one is a proxy, but I have recently picked up a Judge Promo Gaia's Cradle. I simply do not play with the real Judge Promo Cradle because, holy shit, they're expensive, and if some Timmy goes on my cards, I'm going to be really sad. So, most of the people, I would say 99.999% of the people I play with would not ruin my Judge Promo Cradle, but accidents happen, and I'm not going to risk it. So I play with this proxy. I got a foil proxy just so that when people ask, oh, why'd you do that? So I can tell them I can flex a little bit. I have a Promo Cradle. Best land in the deck, not close. Bounce land, bounce land. Now, we are also going to show a little bit off here that we're very greedy with our mana base. We play Mana Confluence. The one life is nothing. It's a command tower. Then it's fetches, more bounce lands. It's more of the same from here, honestly. It's fetches, shocks, and duels. And that's the whole deck. This is a hyper-aggressive lands matter deck that is going to look to, in a lot of cases, get Skewed Swarm or Springheart Nantuko into play, make as many creatures as I can, activate Thrasios, flicker my lands, most likely Cradle, activate Thrasios some more, and just overwhelm the board as quickly as possible. I really, really, really don't have to, like, dirtle too much once it gets going. Once I've got a solid engine in play, I can shuffle this thing up now. Once I've got a solid engine or two in play, the deck will start to fuel itself. Like I said, Mossborn Hydra, things like that are in the deck because they're very, very, very capable of just killing people, right? But I don't really need them in most cases. Oftentimes it's going to go something very similar to find Skewed Swarm as early as possible, put a Cradle into play as early as possible, activate Thrasios a whole bunch. Third thing I need in play right away is Seedborn Muse, and then proceed to landfall 300 times on your guys' turn. Activate Thrasios more and more exponentially because Gaia's Cradle taps for the number of creatures, and every landfall doubles your Skewts. It really is a Gaia's Cradle deck. It wants to get Cradle into play and abuse it with Thrasios activating. And then it's just a bonus that while I'm playing some of these spells, maybe some interaction, that kind of thing, I'm going to shoot you with Vial Smasher a little bit too, which is great. Yeah, I've actually thought, ironically, about cutting the Deadeye Navigator, which we showed earlier somewhere in here, specifically for... there's an extra turn spell called Nexus of Fate. The deck's already relatively salty, so I think running one extra turn spell is really not going to go, well, that's what crossed the line. It's probably Gaia's Cradle and fetching and 14 landfall triggers per turn, drawing 30 cards. The extra turn spell would go in there so that essentially, if I could at some point, Palancron with Yarok, or... I think that's actually my only real infinite mana combo, other than like the Sky Shroud Ranger looping lands with maybe a Lotus Cobra or something in play would generate infinite mana, obviously. But like, if you can get that, you can draw your deck with Thrasios. The issue being with that is if somebody forces you to draw a card, you lose. That's not very often, but it's possible. So I think this Deadeye Navigator will get cut here. We'll go into my sweet little binder. Scroll right to the instance section. And we will grab our good buddy, Nexus of Fate. And we will throw a Nexus of Fate in the deck. It prevents you from being decked. And in some cases, also, by the way, Nexus of Fate is an instant, which is silly, because that means, let's say you are really in a weird spot. It should almost never happen, but let's say you're in a spot where you can not win the game. Let's say this is the only card left in your deck because you've tried to go infinite, and then somebody stops you, you have no more creatures, you're just boned. Vial Smasher will then just win you the game. I will cast Nexus of Fate, shoot you for 7. It goes shuffled into my deck. It's the only card. And then on my turn, I will untap, upkeep, draw, cast Nexus of Fate, shoot you for 7, and I'll present a loop of taking infinite turns and shooting you all to death with Vial Smasher, so Thrasios can take a break from backpacking the entire deck. The deck's got contingencies. It's got ramp, card draw. Doesn't really need a lot of removal. I'm not playing a bunch in the source of, like, I'm pretty much going to try and run my own game plan out as quickly as possible. If I have to force or fierce or deflecting swat something because you're trying to kill a value piece or, you know, you're trying to board wipe and I have 300 Skewed Swarms, I'm really going to try to prevent that kind of thing. It's also for counterspells. Oftentimes deflecting swat, force of will, mana drain will defend me from further interaction while I'm trying to further my strategy. I'm not going to stop you from doing the fun thing unless it stops me blatantly or it wins you the game, and you know what I'm saying? So, like, if you're just trying to go, oh, you want to see me play a 10-mana creature? Yes, I do. I wanna watch you play all the 10-mana creatures, because I'm going to try and do something not similar, but just as good on my turn. You know, you play your game. My counterspells are in here to prevent my imminent demise and to maybe prevent you from winning if I think I can do it soon. So, yeah, that's my deck, guys. That is Thrasios Vial Smasher Landfall. By far my favorite deck. At some point I'll put a little video out. Well, these aren't little. They're about 50 minutes or so. I can talk, can't I? Eventually I'll put a video out on my second, maybe my third favorite deck, Taval. Surprise, surprise. Another combo / Cradle deck. So, yeah, we will go from there. But thank you so much for watching if you did. And, yeah, let me know how I did on this video and what I can do to improve in the future. Thanks.